Assemble! Stay dandy, baby. I'd say the introduction of a biomechanical sacred beast dragon would be sort of jumping the shark for the Gundam franchise, but let's face it, the shark was jumped a long time ago during G Gundam when everything got completely ridiculous and basically transformed into Gundam meets Street Fighter. So I'm willing to accept any and all sort of weirdness when it comes to this series, especially Gundam Build Divers, because this episode right here was just strange to say the least. It's not enough that we have characters who are playing in a virtual reality Gundam game who are being transported to a planet of furry animal people, but now we have the introduction of sacred beast-like creatures which look like monsters on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. That's basically what this entire episode is all about right here, with all the characters going to their respective ruins to try and find this mystical sand. It works out for some, and it doesn't work out for a lot of them. Of course, we go back to the big scene between Kazumi and Maya, and again, their relationship continues to be a really interesting one. We get to see in this episode that Kazumi is sort of beating himself up over the fact that he really wasn't able to save anyone, and that he could have been actually partially responsible for that massive satellite laser destroying everything, and he really admires Maya's strength in the face of all of this craziness. But of course, she reaffirms that she's not as strong as she makes herself out to be, and even manages to break down at that moment. It's a really interesting, like, very human moment for these characters, and it's only interrupted when suddenly Mei and Hiroto arrive as they decide that they're gonna go and try and find Parvis and Freddie, who are currently going on a massive hot air balloon adventure through a sky which is having the storm of the century, and there's lightning and wind gusts all over the place, which ends up completely destroying their balloon, causing them to fall down to the ground. Luckily, they grab one of these balloons, which apparently belonged to Jed, or it's at least the lantern that was, associated with him when he died. I don't know. It's a symbolic moment showing that even in death, Jedi Jed is still there to help out his little brother. But they actually arrive on Milog Mountain, where they make their way through a mysterious cave, and suddenly it feels like we're transported to a completely different show. It feels like we're basically watching like an isekai at this point, and while there are a lot of isekai elements within Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise, here it definitely feels more prevalent than ever as they discover this giant black biomechanical dragon hanging out in a cave who is just sort of sleeping, or at least he's wounded. That's the implication here. And while all of this is going on, we get to see that there were a lot of people who actually survived the big explosion that happened when the big laser was attacking the city. Stola is alive. Those two goofballs whose names I never remember are alive, as well as a bunch of other just random background characters. But Maya decides to stay with them as the One Eyes are getting ready to attack again, and we get to see that now Alice is like directly communicating with the Build Divers here, and I think that's really awesome. He's finally not as a mysterious villain as we saw him in the first season. He's finally starting to sort of take control of the One Eye mobile suits. He even utilizes a brand new gunpla in this episode, which is basically like a dark evil version of the Core Gundam. It has the ability to have armor pieces all over it, and it can transform, and it's incredibly powerful and destructive, and it has got a gnarly laser cannon on it, which basically has this like giant spread shot effect, which is incredibly powerful and really looks like it's going to give these characters a tough time. I mean, Hiroto and the Core Gundam just get absolutely rocked in this episode, and as they're about to be destroyed, that's when that weird dragon just decides to step in and is like, you know what, I'm gonna help. He uses his power to conjure lightning in the sky to cause this gunpla to run away, which I think is kind of ridiculous. I felt like it probably could have survived something like that. But Alice, who is controlling this mobile suit at this time, realizes that this is probably the dragon, who goes by the name of Cuadorn. At least that's how I think it's actually pronounced. So he definitely has some sort of history with these characters, and I still don't know why any of this is. I mean, while he is now finally starting to actually talk with the Build Divers, what his actual motives are really outside of just trying to preserve the planet of Eldora, which involves killing everybody that lives on it, is still kind of strange. I can't wait to see what sort of revelation this entire series is going to bring about. It's either going to be really satisfying or really disappointing at the end of the day. That being said, this episode again is just continuing to show that this show can do anything at this point. I mean, you want to insert Yu-Gi-Oh! Dragons? Let's just do it. Let's just see what's actually going to happen. I'm not going to judge it completely until I see what the overall big plan with this sacred beast is ultimately going to be, but it's already taking a show which is just strange and making it even stranger. So, What's the rundown on this episode of Gundam Build Divers Re? I felt drunk after watching this episode. It was just strange. Like, I knew there was going to be a dragon involved in the series after seeing it teased at the end of the first episode of this season and seeing it in the intro, and now finally, like, seeing it come to fruition is just weird. I mean, now we have these big fantasy elements which are being inserted into this show, which is just a combination of so many different types of genres that it can almost feel a little muddy at times. Not necessarily bad, but just like there's a lot of elements to take in this episode, and it's not completely overwhelming, to be perfectly honest. If you overthink it, that might make you not enjoy the experience that you're getting, but I still think it's actually, you know, an interesting concept. I also love that they're bringing back the weird orb creatures from the last episode, the One-Eyes, which, according to the furry people, are actually the original forms of the One-Eyes, and they're starting to appear a little bit more, acting as sort of the scouts for the other One-Eye mobile suits, or maybe even Alice, who seems to have complete control over all of them, or at least the main one that we saw in this episode that was battling against Hiroto and Mei, which, again, I love the design of that mobile suit. I mean, it's clearly, you see it and you're like, oh yeah, that's an evil bad guy kind of character with its dark purple and blue coloring, and the fact that it sort of emulates the main hero is sort of like a dark, evil, mirrored version of his gunpla, which I think is actually kind of cool. It's a little tropey in some senses, but it kind of works for a series like this, which in and of itself is just a giant trope at the end of the day. All the characters are very stock, so they might as well just sort of run away with it. If anything, it's still better than the first season of Gundam Build Divers, so I have to give it that. And it's doing something different, which is something that I have to commend it for. You know, that being said, I've said many times in the past that I am still waiting for that more traditional Gundam anime, but for the moment, this continues to be fun popcorn entertainment, and I'll continue to watch it as long as they continue to make it. And, you know, hopefully it all resolves in a pretty interesting story with some cool revelations. I mean, the sky's the limit now that we got a giant freaking Yu-Gi-Oh! Dragon that can summon lightning. There it is. So, overall, while I did enjoy this episode, especially for some of the new elements that they introduced, I still thought it was kind of just an okay episode. There were definitely some moments that I really liked, and I especially loved the design of Alice's evil Core Gundam mobile suit, whatever that thing is going to be called. But still, the whole dragon thing and just everything else, everything moved kind of slow in this episode. I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. To me, just kind of an average episode of the series. Not bad, not great, but still very watchable, especially if you are following the series. And if anything, it's an essential episode. It's definitely one you need to check out if you're going to continue to watch the series, as there are important details introduced in this episode. So, yeah. Pretty decent episode, and like I said, even on the production side of things, just kind of more of what you'd expect. Not super high caliber, but still pretty good for the most part. This is one of those series where they sort of like save their best animators for the biggest action episodes. That being said, still pretty decent episode and very watchable. I'd love to get all of your thoughts about it in the comment section below, what you guys thought about the episode, the brand new evil mobile suits which are introduced in this one right here, the introduction of Cuadorn, the lightning conjuring dragon. Do you think we're going to see any other sacred beasts? Do you think the element of these fantasy creatures sort of destroys the series or enhances it just a little bit more? What do you want to see from the future of Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise? Sound off in the comments section below and let's discuss it. So thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more just like this one. Jump in your gunpla, get in the cockpit, hit that like button. It really helps out these videos a lot. But one of the best ways to help us out is to watch our videos and to check out my Patreon account. Check it out in the description box below. Remember, a small donation really helps out the channel tremendously, and it can give you an opportunity to get a Patreon requested review. I'll review an anime series of your choice, so please make sure to check that out. Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.